She left me for someone more successful. 3 years later, she texted me asking to talk. I had just closed a $4 million deal that morning. She left me on a Thursday evening in March. She said I was going nowhere, that she needed someone who matched her ambition, that she'd met someone who did. I sat in our apartment after she walked out, and I didn't move for a long time. I want to be honest about what those next months looked like, because I think the part people skip over, the part where it actually breaks you, is the most important part of the story. And I want to tell you all of it, including the Tuesday morning 3 years later, when her name appeared on my phone and I was sitting in my car outside the office where I just closed the biggest deal of my career. My name is James. I'm 34 now. This story starts when I was 30, which is a specific kind of age. Old enough to think you know who you are, young enough to be completely wrong about it. Her name was Mia. We'd been together for 3 years, living together for one. She was sharp and driven, and the kind of person who had a 5-year plan before most people her age had a 1-year plan. I loved that about her. I loved a lot of things about her. I also think, looking back, that I spent a significant portion of our relationship feeling like I was running slightly behind. Like she was always a few steps ahead, and I was working to keep up without admitting I was working to keep up. I was 30 and working as a mid-level project manager at a software company. Not failing, performing fine, getting decent reviews, making a salary that paid my half of our shared life comfortably, but not exactly setting the world on fire either. I had ideas for something of my own that I talked about occasionally and hadn't acted on. The way people talk about things they're not quite ready to do anything about. Mia had recently been promoted to a senior role at her firm. Her income had jumped significantly. And around that time, I can see it now, I couldn't see it then, something shifted in how she looked at me. Not dramatically, just a recalibration, small and quiet, the kind you don't notice until it's been happening for a while. She met him at a conference in November. His name was Ryan. He ran his own company, had the kind of easy confidence that comes from having succeeded at something, wore it without trying. She told me about him in the way you tell your partner about a professional contact you found interesting, casually, once, with no particular emphasis. I filed it away and thought nothing more about it. By March, I understood what November had actually been. She sat me down after dinner. I remember the dishes were still on the table. We hadn't cleared them yet. And she had the expression of someone who has decided something and is past the point of reconsidering. She said she didn't think we wanted the same things, that she'd been feeling disconnected for a while, that she needed to be with someone who had the same drive she did, who was building something, who was going somewhere specific. She said it wasn't about Ryan, which was the first time she'd said his name in weeks, but about what she needed in a partner. She said she was sorry. She said she hoped I'd understand eventually. I didn't say much. I'm not sure I was capable of saying much. There's a specific kind of shock that isn't loud. It's very quiet, almost calm on the surface, while underneath, something is restructuring itself completely. That's what was happening. I sat across from her and I heard what she was saying, and some part of me was already absorbing the fact that everything I've been building my daily life around was being removed. She packed a bag that night and stayed with a friend. A week later, she came back for the rest of her things while I was at work, which I think was a kindness and also possibly an avoidance. I came home to an apartment that was half empty in the specific way that's worse than fully empty, because all the absences have shapes. I called my brother. He came over. We didn't talk much. He stayed for 3 hours and ordered pizza. I mostly didn't eat, and that was exactly what I needed from him. I want to tell you this part honestly because I think it's the part that gets cleaned up in most versions of this story, and the cleaned up version isn't useful to anyone. I was not okay. Not for a long time. Not in a dramatic, visible way. I went to work. I functioned. I maintained the basic architecture of a normal life. But underneath that, I was dealing with something that went beyond the relationship itself. What Mia had said, that I was going nowhere, that I didn't match her ambition, had landed somewhere specific. Not because I believed she was right exactly, but because I wasn't sure she was wrong. I had ideas I hadn't acted on, a job I was performing but not building toward anything, a life that was comfortable and directionless in a way I'd been successfully not examining. She hadn't invented that. She'd just said it out loud. The first 2 months were the worst. I slept badly. I was distracted at work in ways I managed to conceal but could feel. I ran into a mutual friend, who mentioned, without thinking, that Mia and Ryan seemed happy, and I drove home from that conversation and sat in my parking lot for 20 minutes before I could go inside. At some point in month 3, something shifted. I couldn't tell you the exact day. It wasn't a dramatic turning point, no single moment of clarity, no montage. It was more like a slow change in direction, the way water finds a new path after something blocks the original one. I started working on the idea I'd been talking about for 2 years without acting on. A project management software tool designed specifically for construction firms. A niche I knew from a previous job and that had specific needs the general tools on the market weren't serving well. I started in the evenings, after work. I told nobody. Not because I was embarrassed, but because I needed it to be mine for a while before it was anything else. I worked on it for 4 months before I showed it to anyone. The first person I showed it to was a former colleague who knew the construction industry. He said it solved a real problem. He said he knew 3 firms that would pay for it right now. He asked if I was serious about this. I said I was serious about this. I gave notice at my job 2 months later. My brother thought I was having a breakdown. My mother asked twice if I was sure. I was sure in the specific way you're sure about something when you've thought about it from every angle for 6 months and it still looks right from all of them. I'm not going to pretend the next 2 years were a smooth, upward line, because they weren't. There were months where the money was genuinely frightening. There was a partnership that fell apart badly in year 1 and cost me 6 months of momentum and a friendship I valued. There were nights where I sat with a laptop and a spreadsheet that didn't add up and thought seriously about whether I'd made a catastrophic mistake. I kept going. Not out of stubbornness, or not only out of stubbornness, but because the work itself was good, and I knew it was good, and I had enough evidence by then, in the form of clients who were paying and renewing and referring other clients, that the problem I'd identified was real and my solution was working. By the end of year 2, I had 11 paying clients, 1 full-time employee, 1 part-time contractor, and a product that had been refined by 2 years of real-world feedback into something considerably better than what I'd started with. I had also lost 15 pounds, started running again for the first time since college, and moved into a better apartment that I'd chosen entirely based on my own preferences with no compromises required. I had not thought about Mia in a long time. That had happened gradually, not by effort, not by forcing it, just by filling the space with things that mattered more. She had become someone I used to know, which is a different category from someone who hurt you. And getting to that category had taken about 1.5 years, and it felt, when I arrived there, like putting down something I hadn't realized I was still carrying. I went on some dates, nothing serious for a while. I wasn't in a hurry, and I'd learned something in the previous 3 years about the cost of building a life around someone else's timeline. When I did meet someone I was serious about, her name was Kate, and she was a structural engineer who had strong opinions about process efficiency and thought my product was interesting for reasons she could explain specifically, which is the most attractive quality I can imagine in a person. We had been together for 4 months when the Tuesday happened. I had just closed the biggest contract of my company's short life, a regional construction group with 14 active projects that had been in conversation with us for 3 months. The number on the contract was just over $4 million over 3 years. I had signed it that morning, shaken hands with their CFO, driven back to my car, and sat there for a few minutes just letting it be real. My phone buzzed, a number I didn't immediately recognize, then did because some things stay in your memory regardless of whether you want them to. The message said, "Hey, I know this is out of nowhere. I've been thinking about you a lot lately. Would you be open to talking?" I read it twice. I looked out the windshield at the parking structure I was sitting in. I thought about the Thursday evening 3 years ago, the dishes still on the table, the specific quiet of what she'd said. I thought about the months after, the parking lot I'd sat in for 20 minutes, the spreadsheets that didn't add up. The evening I showed my product to my former colleague, and he said it solved a real problem. I thought about Kate, who was meeting me for lunch in 40 minutes, and who I was going to tell about the contract over whatever she ordered, and who would ask specific and intelligent questions about what it meant for the next phase of the product. Because that's who she was. I typed a reply. I kept it short. I said I was glad she'd reached out, and that I hoped she was well, and that I didn't think talking was something I needed. I said it without heat, genuinely, not as a performance. Then I put my phone in my pocket and started the car. She replied once more, a longer message, and I read it when I got home that evening. She talked about how she'd been following what I was building, that Ryan hadn't worked out, that she'd thought a lot about what she'd said when she left, and she didn't think she'd been fair, that she missed what we'd had. I sat with it. I let it be what it was, An honest message from someone who had once been important to me, arriving at a time when it meant nothing. It might have meant 2 years earlier. I didn't reply to that one, not out of cruelty. There was simply nothing to say that would have been more honest than silence. The company has 19 clients now. I hired a second full-time employee in January, and I'm looking at a third. The product is being used on over 200 active construction projects across 6 states. None of this is what I imagined when I started. It's better than what I imagined, in the specific way that the real version of something is always more complicated and more satisfying than the imagined version. Kate and I moved in together 3 months ago. She reorganized my kitchen the first week, which I objected to and then immediately understood was an improvement. She is the person I call when the spreadsheet doesn't add up, not because she fixes it for me, but because she asks the right questions that help me fix it myself, which is considerably more useful. I think about what Mia said sometimes. Going nowhere, not matching her ambition. I've spent time trying to figure out whether to be angry about it, and I keep arriving at the same conclusion. She wasn't entirely wrong about the person I was at 30. She was wrong about what that person was capable of becoming. But she didn't know that. I didn't know that. The difference between us is that she made a decision based on who I was, and I made a decision, slowly, painfully, over many months, based on who I could be. Hers was a reasonable decision with the information she had. Mine turned out to be the right one. The Thursday she walked out was the worst evening of my life at the time. I wouldn't take it back. Not the leaving, not the months after, not the parking lot or the spreadsheets, or any of it. Because the person who closed a $4 million deal on a Tuesday morning and read a message from his past and felt nothing but a quiet, clean finality. That person was built out of all of it. Every single piece of it. If you're in the middle of the part I described, the months after, the part that doesn't look like a comeback yet, stay in it. That part is the work. The rest follows. If you made it to the end, thank you. Drop a like if this one meant something. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you.